One of my readers said that the book does help her deepen her empathy for others who live a different life, right? Others who have the completely different upbringing, and that's definitely the reason why I write. And I just want people to be more curious, to be more empathetic, and to be more kind without making a judgment about someone that you don't know very well.
Everyone, and welcome to Tales of Our Times. This is a show where we discuss the stories that move us, what makes them so meaningful, and why others could or should find meaning in them as well. This is not a spoiler-free show, so bear that in mind as you continue to listen. We tackle movies, books, podcasts, and more. Where there's a story, there's a reason to read. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, and today we're doing a very special Takes of Our Time episode where we are interviewing the author of the novel How to Break a Girl, a woman with an amazing name and a great story to share. Please help me welcome today's guest, How to Break a Girl author, Amanda Sung. Welcome to the studio here at RTI.
Thank you for having me.
I hope it doesn't sound too much like an echo as I ask you questions.
Oh, no. Thank
you. Can you please introduce yourself for the listeners to kind of put this into context with the rest of your works?
Hello, dearest gentle listeners. If you know, you know. My name, like our lovely host, is also Amanda, with the last name Sung, S-U-N-G, which apparently is a Korean last name. Here's a fun fact about me. I've been told by a lot of Koreans that they think I look like a Korean girl who has already had all the work done, whatever that means.
Right.
Because after all, I'm a proud Taiwanese Canadian. Born in Taipei, I moved to Vancouver, Canada when I was 15 years old. Several months after landing, my parents decided to leave me and my younger sister alone in a brand new country to raise ourselves.
So today we're discussing your first book, How to Break a Girl. So could you give the listeners an introduction to what they can expect?
How to Break a Girl initially was conceived as a memoir. It follows 3 Asian Canadian women, Lily, born in Taiwan like myself, Aurora, born in Hong Kong like a lot of my friends back in Vancouver, Elizabeth, born in Korea, also like a lot of my friends back in Vancouver. When I did my master thesis at UBC, my thesis at the time was a memoir.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No
Is that
problem.
common to be able to do a memoir as a thesis?
Actually, no, and thank you for asking me that question.
It's the first time I've ever heard of somebody doing that.
Apparently, as far as I was told back in 2009, I'm revealing my age here, that at UBC Masters of Journalism program, there was only one quota for memoir every year.
So one per year, that's allowed.
Yes, and I was invited by the program director to write a memoir. I had no idea at the time. Prior to her asking me that I could do a memoir.
Yeah.
And apparently there were 2 other students that wanted to do theirs as well.
But ultimately yours was chosen.
Mine was invited to actually. Yeah.
And that's what you turned into How to Break a Girl.
Yes. So technically my memoir at the time was more about the initial chapters of my book pertaining to how Lily, the character that was born in Taiwan, ended up just growing up in Vancouver by herself. So that phenomenon at the time was described as satellite children, and that was the interest that the program
They wanted to know more about.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But your book doesn't just follow satellite children exclusively. It kind of follows these 3 women's journeys. So, do you have maybe an elevator pitch for what each of the women go through in your book? And then we'll move on to the next question.
Sure. Aurora, born in Hong Kong, has a father that she's never met. And due to her exotic look, she often gets unwanted sexual attention from various men that she works with at work. And due to those experiences at work, she develops imposter syndrome, right? That's very real. Like she constantly wonders whether or not she is like the head of marketing, the head of PR, because her boss, has a crush on her, or is it that she's actually good?
Yeah. And so then Elizabeth came from a Korean family where her father was very successful. And whenever she came home with a report card that was not straight A's, she would be not allowed to come into home. So she comes from an abusive home.
Right. And because of that, like she spent all her life wondering whether or not she was good enough. That's why she married a single father 17 years older than she is, only at the end, to be kicked out.
Kind of working through her own like familial cycles and trying not to repeat them. And then Lily, the Taiwanese satellite child.
Right. Lily, a lot of my friends or acquaintances who don't know me as well, they often assume that Lily is me, not knowing that the other two are also based on me. So Lily shared a lot more similarity with me in the sense that, we have the same upbringing, and we both went to UBC. We both had a thesis, and we both wrote a book. So Lily is more complex in the sense that she seems a bit too all over the place. And she seems to be constantly chasing, right? Like looking for something to choose her.
So then let's go back to kind of the process that created this book. As you mentioned, something that stands out about it compared to other books that we've talked on this is that it started as a memoir for your master's thesis, but then became a fiction novel. So can you tell us more about the process of taking a memoir and thesis into a fiction novel? Because I think that's kind of a transformation that not a lot of fiction, certainly not that we've talked about on this show, has gone through. And I think that they're kind of two genres people think of as very distinct.
Yes, I'd agree with you. Memoir, to me, has to be verified in a lot of ways, right? It has to be accurate. However, I definitely see the opportunity for a story that's either fiction or, in this case, fictionalized to be able to spark conversations. Because a lot of times when we write or when we read, we feel safer in that space created by fiction or fictionalized stories rather than memoir. Initially, I thought about writing it as a memoir. However, at the end, I changed my mind due to one reason, which is in the book. The other reason was I did not want it to be just my story. Like I knew deep in my heart that a lot of women out there, especially women that have gone through immigration, migration, any women that have been through workplace sexual harassment, any type of trauma, would be able to see parts of themselves on the pages. So I wanted it to offer this opportunity for dialogues and to heal.
So it seems like taking it into fiction for you and out of a memoir was a way to help the novel speak to something greater or even maybe to reach more people than you felt it would have as a memoir.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. So another interesting thing about the book and sort of how you introduce the characters is the use of flashbacks, which is used at the very beginning of the novel. Each of these flashbacks towards the beginning is used to introduce the character's trauma. And in our discussions before the interview, so this is kind of getting a little bit meta with like lifting the curtain for the listeners, but you described the use of these flashbacks as a deliberate choice to, in your own words, convey a disorienting blend of East and West perspectives. So I'm wondering if you can elaborate on that for us. What experiences were you drawing on that led you to make this choice in your book?
Initially, I thought about starting the book with chapter 2, which start with April 2001, because that is the month when my father brought his mistress to our home in Vancouver. And that was also the premises of my master's thesis.
So at this point, then, starting in the past.
Right.
Especially compared to where the book begins now.
Then it would have been more chronological and a lot less flashback would actually happen. However, I love the idea of a graduation because it symbolizes a new beginning, right? That you have accomplished something in your life, and then you're surrounded by people who love you, and together you embark on a new journey. Like I love the idea of that as an opening. And one thing I love about flashbacks is it takes the readers onto that memory lane that a lot of immigrant children, a lot of trauma survivors take quite often, like whether they want to or not. I have also received low ratings from readers who say that technique is either too slow or too rush. You cannot please everybody.
Yeah.
But that is the point. And that is the story. Because imagine Lily or the other two girls, right? Like when they first arrive as just teenagers, children, without parents or with parents who have not adopted it to the new culture. How they felt in the beginning for sure was going to be extremely chaotic.
It seems like then your choice to use the flashbacks is sort of meant to emulate maybe the way in which these characters were subject to them themselves, sort of unwanted intrusions or like the intrusive thoughts of what led them there. And that is what you were trying to replicate in your novel as well, that just going about the daily life or trying to do normal things will constantly be bringing back these moments of confusion or unwanted memories for them.
Yeah. And I really wanted this to be a more immersive experience for readers to truly experience what I was experiencing, what so many other immigrant children were experiencing.
Yeah, to kind of put them in that headspace.
Yes, that's how a lot of young immigrants feel, or even any immigrants, right? Like we're constantly feeling home and foreign at the same time, right? That we're not quite native, we're not quite local, but then we're not quite a stranger either. Yeah. And that is an experience that's gonna stay with us, really, for all our lives. And I feel having a bit of a chaotic, right, storytelling techniques would be able to bring that out.
So then let's get into the characters a little bit more as well. You mentioned when you do readings or when you get when you get reader feedback, one question you like to ask people is if there is a character that they identify with more than the others. So I wanted to ask you if you have seen any trend in that for maybe readers identifying with one of these three characters over the others, and what you think some reason behind that might be, if you even feel like that's something you can speak to.
Sure. In the beginning, a lot of my beta readers loved Aurora. There was one male beta reader even said that the book is about her. And I think it's because she was a career woman right from the beginning. Like she had an amazing job and she was doing really well. And that's why a lot of people actually felt that she had a lot more going on. However, now that the book is out in the world and
more.
Right. Yeah. So Lily, finally, there's probably a few readers who like her now, because in the beginning there was none.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in the beginning, beta readers, none of them like Lily, which made me really sad.
Right. It's always hard when you put your work out there. And like, of course, we know we write flawed people so that they can grow in our fiction. But it's hard when maybe not all the readers appreciate the growth that each character goes through. Does Elizabeth get any love in the book? Or do you feel like she's sort of a middle ground in terms of like who readers tend to identify with?
She probably gets the least love. However, she is my favorite character.
I was going to say, I know she's your favorite.
Yes.
So, well, that's the most important. She has your support.
And I do have to say, when the beta readers found out that she was my favorite, they were surprised because they thought I would pick Aurora.
Let's take another step back. Something I like to close these interviews with is, did you have an ideal audience in mind when you were writing this book? And also, what meaning do you hope that readers will get from your novel, How to Break a Girl, whether they're from your ideal audience or not?
Most of my beta readers were Asian women, either born in Vancouver or that they moved there when they were really young, like myself. And I thought that they would be my ideal target readers. While some of them were, not all. For example, a third generation Chinese Canadian girl had no idea why Lily would need to pick a name for herself, English name for herself, when she moved right from Taiwan to Canada. Like, to her, that was bizarre because she was born with an English name.
It wasn't a part of her experience that she'd gone through.
Yeah. So that was a surprise. And I also thought that non-Asian women, for example, like Caucasian and white women in Canada, would be able to relate to what it's like to be a woman at work, for example, right? Because those challenges that we face at work are universal, right? They do transcend religions, race, and so on.
Well, and to an extent, I think there is a lot of relatability in like each character you mentioned at the beginning. Elizabeth has a lot of struggles with like trying to not emulate patterns from her childhood and her marriage. Lily trying to, kind of be taken seriously and find a place in like having graduated college successfully. And Aurora with imposter syndrome, which are all on their face very relatable, I think, for a lot of people out there.
However, I was quite surprised now that a lot more people have read my book and gone on Goodreads to write reviews and so on. I've seen a pattern where a lot of white women, most of them said that they cannot resonate, even though I thought, the themes in there pertain to all women.
So your ideal audience was, it sounds to me like primarily Asian women, especially like women who might have had this one foot in both worlds experience as having come from Asia into Canada, especially, but not just there. And hopefully broadly to women in general to find someone that they can resonate with in this story.
One of my readers, ironically, she was white, said that the book does help her deepen her empathy for others, others who live a different life, right? Others who have the completely different upbringing than she does. And that's definitely the reason why I write. So I do have to say, like, if anybody who does not have an inquisitive mind, reader that doesn't want to do the hard work to connect the dots, because the book does get quite meta at some point, and they probably would not want to finish the book.
So then what meaning do you hope that people will get out of it? And is it kind of in part what you just mentioned, a greater empathy for other people who may live a similar life pattern to you, but may have a completely different journey to where they are today?
I feel not just Asian women, not just immigrant women, even though perhaps more so. I find a lot of us, and men included, have what I call this perfect intact eyeliner, right? That looks so composed and put together, but we have no idea. We have no idea what they have had to battle against to get to where they are. And perhaps the reason why you think they are so put together is because they work so hard to make sure that you would think so. And I just want people to be more curious, to be more empathetic, and to be more kind without making a judgment about someone that you don't know very well right away.
Well, unfortunately, I think that's all the time that we have for today. So thank you so much, Amanda, for coming in. The last question is, where can people find that book if they're interested in reading it?
In Taiwan, I believe it's on 博客来, Amazon, Kobo. Kobo does offer like a worldwide store, which is accessible to Taiwan and Singapore and so on. And if you happen to be living in Vancouver's Chinatown Storytelling Center, which is also in my book, carries them. If you happen to be in San Francisco, the Chinatowns on Waverly also carries them. And if you would like to know whether or not your city does have a channel, feel free to DM me.
We'll put that in our show notes for anyone who's interested in getting in touch.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, thank you so much for listening. This has been Tales of Our Time on Radio Taiwan International. I was your host, Amanda Stevens, with my guest today, Amanda Sung. And again, we were discussing her book, How to Break a Girl. Join us next week for even more stories and more interviews about meaningful books that you can read anywhere you go. We'll see you next time. Bye. You're listening to Radio Taiwan International.